pivots and corporate plays. We'll groove through it all in funky ways. So join us now, let's find our way. Listen to pips and pivots every single day. Ooh, get money, get paid.
It's recording. Sick. Pips and pivots. What's up? You made it. Live and in color. Yeah, so I think I figured out how to do video and audio and yeah, we'll see how this goes. We'll start doing it. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Uh, you know, both of you. It's like no one listens to this shit still, so it's awesome. I love it. I could say anything on here. Literally anything. Um Anyway, I thought today what would be a cool episode was I did this exercise just yesterday, just trying to think of like content ideas. And I thought about, I look back on my entire sales career and I thought about like if I could do it all over again, like what would I do differently? Or what are some of the like the obvious things, the low-hanging fruit that like, I didn't get right, and if I had gotten it right, I probably would have had better results. So I came up with six things, and I figured just given what the podcast is about and all that stuff, career stuff, I thought this would be a useful topic. Also, this is well, if if I release it in the order that it's recorded, this will be the 15th episode, which is pretty cool. It's not a round number, but it's like a symmetrical number. So that's good. So here are the six things I wish I would have done differently as a sales rep. One, I wish I would have been more pessimistic when looking at my pipeline. So generally, like whenever I was forecasting, whenever I would look at my pipeline, like one, I would I was horrible at just cutting people loose, like cutting deals loose that it was like they would give me just the smallest sliver of hope and I would just keep them in my pipeline forever and just consistently like nurture them and wish for something good to happen. And what would happen is they'd lead me on forever and waste my time, and nothing good would happen, and then just nothing, get nothing from it. So I wish I would have looked at my pipeline not in terms of like all the possibility and all the potential that's in there and really looking at it through rose colored glasses. But I wish I would have, if I could go back in time, if I could get in a DeLorean, get it up to 88 miles per hour, go back to, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would have instead looked at my pipeline through the eyes of like a pessimist, like everything is half empty in this, and just really looked at every deal in terms of like everything that could go wrong with it. That's something I do with my coaching clients today. Like if they're having a hard time, the same troubles that I would have, just hey, my deals are stalling out. That's one of the things we do. We look at their pipeline, and deal by deal, we just make a list. Like what are all the possible things that could go wrong with this deal, and then you factor those things into your next step. So when you're putting your next steps in there, you're thinking of it not just in terms of like moving it down your sales process, moving them down their buyer's journey, but also mitigating risk now. So what are the things you could do to mitigate risk in this? So that's one. That's a huge thing that ooh gosh, just regret around that one. Um, Another one, and it kind of ties into this, and hopefully I explain how it ties in, but leveraging managers in deals better and doing it earlier. So one of the reasons I think I would always, look at my pipeline and kind of like, through rose colored glasses and through, way too much optimism, was that like the relationship I always had with my managers, for whatever reason, I never viewed it as a partnership. I always viewed it as like, there's this authority, this authoritarian figure, and I'm kind of operating under them, and I just gotta like kind of stay out of their way, and stay out of the path of their wrath. So like just make things look good and okay during pipeline reviews, and then just go on and I'll clean up the mess behind the scenes. Just but really what I should have been doing is really like brought them in as a partner and been like, like I was saying before, kind of give them a real deal understanding of, all the things that could be going wrong in my pipeline, and then worked with them to circumvent those things. And one of the things I could have done to circumvent, any kind of like pipeline fiction is leverage them in deals earlier and better. So that executive or executive alignment and leadership alignment, I kind of use those things interchangeably sometimes, but just that motion of like your manager reaching out to either the champion or the economic buyer at the account, whoever you've been talking to, with the messaging of like, hey, I know you've been talking to Chris, and he's really excited to be working with you guys, as am I, but I wanted to follow up and open this line of communication and see if there was anything that I could help you with, and really just make sure that Chris is taking good care of you. So really, just sending that email, it does a lot of things. One, if your champion is not for real, it's a good pressure test, right? They'll push back on that. They'll let you know like, hey man, I don't want to be talking to your boss, that type of deal, or they'll just ignore it, like you'll never hear back from them. Also, the opposite side of that coin, if you do get a reply back from them, or if your manager does, like that's a great sign. If they're like, oh yeah, we love working with Chris, we're really excited to get this started too, blah blah blah, it's like, okay, good, I can feel a little bit better about maybe moving this thing into commit. And really, I think just the concept of team selling and pulling more people into a deal and aligning more of your resources with their resources, I think it's always a good thing. I don't think it's ever a bad thing. So that's definitely something that I could have done a little bit differently. But then, with that being said, I wish I would have taken less responsibility for my performance. So for the longest time, like really until probably like basically my whole career, I was always like, I came up in a very like hardcore boiler room cold calling background. We didn't even have a CRM. It was just, you went to Google, you did a search for bad plumbers in Tacoma, Washington, and you just picked up your phone and you started calling everyone that popped up, and you were like, hey, I need to talk to the owner. The reason is that when people Google bad plumbers in Tacoma, your business, it comes up. We can help you with this. Give me $400. That was like the whole deal. And in that environment, like it was just super hardcore. It was straight commission. And our CEO, who was like one of my first sales mentors, he was always like, man, all you need is an internet connection and a phone, and you should be able to hit your quota. You don't need anything else. Like, you are responsible for this. And it was really like drilled into me. And also, before I got into sales, I was a small business owner for a long, 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 long time. And as a small business owner, it is kind of like all on you. So, that message that he was giving me, even though it's, pretty fucking toxic, it really resonated with me, right? It was like, yeah, you're right. I do have control over this. And there is a good way to look at that message. There is, you control your own destiny to a large degree in sales. So that was really cool. But I wish I would have tempered all those things. So I wish I would have, taken responsibility for the things that are in my control, but also really like sounded the alarm for things that are out of my control. So, really like doing the backwards math and looking at like one job, I had a $1.2 million annual quota. Our average deal size was 30 grand. It took about 90 days to close. And we're working from named accounts. So basically, you have these accounts, and these are the only accounts you can sell to. So I only had 100 accounts, and within those 100 accounts, only 10 of those were what you could have considered as ICP accounts, right? So it's like, I'm sure you're listening, you're familiar with this, but you have like your ICP accounts. So it's like, these are tier one, these are target accounts, these are ones that we can help the most. It's a slam dunk. And then you have kind of like the tier two accounts where it's like, I'll take some meetings with them, but I'm not going to like put too much time into them because they're not a great fit. And then you have the tier three accounts where it's like, maybe marketing should just kind of like nurture those and get them further in their buyer's journey. So I only had 10 of those ICP accounts. And of those 10 ICP accounts, I think like 6 of them we're under contract with our main competitor. And so when you do the math, it's like, oh yeah, there's you're set up to fail. Like they're and they know this, but I'm in the meantime, I'm like, everything's great, boss. I have everything I need. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do all this and do this, that, and the other thing, and I'm gonna close all these deals. It's just like I should have been like, okay, I've done the math. There's no way I'm gonna hit quota. What's likely is I'm probably gonna end up down here. So what can you do to like give me more accounts, give me some leads, yada yada yada, to kind of true this up so that I can meet your expectations. So really like just kept it real, just kind of tempered all of that positivity and that radical ownership with like just some like keeping it real and really just using data to kind of look at the state of affairs and be like, that was one job. Another job, it was like there was zero product market fit. It was like, if you've ever heard the term vaporware, we were selling vaporware. It was like, yeah, we're going to create this awesome business platform, start selling it. And then, we're like 6 months, 9 months, a year into this. And it's like, hey, we're selling this thing, but we haven't really seen it. Like, does it exist? So it's like, just like all this shit. And so what would happen, like when you're taking all that responsibility, like you just burn yourself out, right? Because every failure is 100% on you. It's no one else's fault. And it's like, it's really unhealthy. So, just I wish if I could have gone back, I would have softened that up a little bit. Um, oh, the other thing too. All right. So, and this is if you're listening to this podcast because you're looking for tips like how to pivot out of sales, like if you're more on like, the pivot of the pips and pivots part of the podcast, this one's for you. So, brief water break. So, if like I've already established, like as a seller, it's not something most people do for like their entire career. So if you're one of those people, and you want to start kind of preparing yourself for some kind of exit, even if you're happy now, but like maybe 5-10 years down the road, you're going to want to be doing something else. Get involved with other parts of the business outside of the sales organization or outside of just your selling function. So in one of the earlier episodes, I interviewed the guy who actually named the podcast. His name's Zach Lander Portnoy, and he's a CRO at a company. And so I was asking him if someone's early in their career and they eventually want to be an executive, they want to be a CRO or something like that, like what can they be doing right now as a BDR or an SMBAE to really prepare themselves for that? And what he said was try to acquire as much business acumen as possible. And then so I drilled into that because I'm like, well, Zach, when you tell me that, like, I just go straight to like reading books and listening to podcasts. But the problem with that is like, you never know if it's good information. You're not really diligent about it. Like, how would you propose people acquire this business acumen? And he's like, learn about as much as your current company as possible. So how they attract, acquire, retain, renew customers, like all the way down the buyer's journey. So everyone that's involved in that process, like figure out how that works with your business. Just ping those people and put time on their calendar. And also, like I mentioned too, oh, that's good to hear. One of the things, I used to do was always volunteer for like special projects. And so I would get to like, trade paint with some of these other functions. And he was like, yeah, but then I wish I would have like double clicked into that and really been super deliberate with it. And, just like not just volunteering for projects, but doing like what Zach was talking about, like proactively seeking out people in the organization, hitting them up in Slack and being like, putting 15 minutes on their calendar to learn about like what does demand generation do, what does recruiting and HR and total benefits do, and what does operations do. Like that's something like I still don't understand when I see people with operations titles. It's like, what do you really do though? Like, what is that? How do you measure it? I don't know. So that's definitely something you could do. It's in your control. It's free to be able to start doing that. And yeah, I mean, what you're doing is you're just educating yourself and you're getting like the best education you can, which is like a real world education. You're not, like taking a class somewhere that's going to be templated and broad and general. You're really getting that business acumen, in real time, in a real life experience, which I think is awesome. Okay, so that's 4. Number 5 coming right up. Suspense. So number 5, this is something I could have done. I was kind of doing it at the end, but really like niche down in the companies I was working for and who we were selling to. So like when I look at the reps that kind of came into sales at the same time as me, the ones that are really like super successful, they just kind of stayed within like one lane, right? And specifically, not just like selling the same type of technology, like that's one way to do it, but also keep it so like you're selling to the same group of people at every job that you're doing. So, I hopped around from like online search marketing basically to e-commerce software to team productivity software to sales engagement software, um, and then to HubSpot, which is like sales engagement and marketing and CRM and all this other bullshit. And it feels like there was something else. There was another one in there. There was an insurtech company that I was at for 3 months that I don't even put on my resume because they got acquired like a month after I started working there. And so I went and applied at HubSpot right after it. I was like, I'm not going to stick around for this. I'm new. I can get out now. So that's what I did. So like that jumping around. So like at the end of my career, like the team productivity software, like I was selling into sales a little bit. So I was talking to VPs of sales and like understanding them. And I really liked those conversations. And then when I went to work at Outreach, I got to like really dig in. And then HubSpot, it was a little bit of the sales, but mainly focused on marketing. But like during that stretch was the only place where I had that kind of continuity. So like I think back and it's like, well, what if, just, and again, hindsight's 2020, but what if, perfect case scenario, like that first job, I would have figured out that I love, sales engagement, sales orchestration, sales automation, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Like I love this shit. And what if my first job was in there? And so I could have spent the next 10 years selling that stuff, selling similar stuff to VPs of sales, VPs of sales enablement. Like I could have had a completely different career trajectory as a seller. So if you're doing your career and you're trying to figure out like, how can I really like, make up a lot of ground quickly? I think that's one way to do it because you're continuously leveraging the same expertise and you're adding to that expertise. You're not having to come into a job and like really come in fresh and learn about, okay, we have this total new group of people that I'm selling to, totally different, software that I'm selling. Like I got to figure out what it does and the challenges it solves. Like you're already kind of like ramped to a degree. And then lastly, number 6, I wish that I would have been more diligent with my personal branding. So I've been on LinkedIn like forever, since before I even got into sales. So like we're probably talking, I probably got on there like 15 or 16 years ago. And like I've seen this whole maturity and evolution of the platform that's been kind of interesting, but also like the way I've used it has totally changed. And in the beginning, it was very much just like spamming like company propaganda, like this is who we are, this is what we do, and like it was because it was early in the platform and no one knew like how to use it or what to do. But a couple of things like I got wrong. Like one, when I was a seller, I never really approached it from a personal branding perspective. Like I always approached it as, positioning myself as a subject matter expert in, whatever niche that I was selling into. And then that way, my prospects who I was connecting with, I would show up in their feed. And eventually over time, they would be like, hey, this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. Like, we should take the meeting with him, that type of deal. So I wish I would have, yeah, I wish I would have like not just done that, but also focused on like me and, promoting myself as a human. Kind of like, how I've been using LinkedIn the past couple years. So that's one, like really, not just promoting like, what I do and the things I know and that type of thing, but also like, me as a professional and subject matter expert in terms of sales orchestration, which I'm doing now, right? Um, and also just been more regular with it. So there was no point in time during my career as a seller when I was posting even like 3 times a week. It was always like very sporadic. I would get, I'd get a wild hair in my ass to start posting on LinkedIn. I do it for a little bit, then I get distracted with other things. And then even like since I left sales. Like by that time I had seen the benefit. I figured out that motion and framework of like how you can promote your personal brand on LinkedIn and how to do it. But the execution just always hasn't been there. It's been like, yeah, I'll post every day for like, for a while it was like every day for like a year, and then I just totally fell off. Like for instance, when I started this job, I didn't post shit for 6 months, like literally 6 months. I didn't post a thing on LinkedIn. It was just like zero time. And when I look back to kind of my freelance work that I do, and I look back to like that period when I was posting every day versus that 6 month period, it was crickets. Like no one was reaching out to me. And also, I, I didn't have the bandwidth to talk to them anyway. Wonder if you guys can hear my dog because I got the things in. Ruby, shut the fuck up. Um, but like when I was posting every day for a year, like you build this momentum, and it's like it's not a silver bullet shot in the arm type thing, but it's like people just kind of drip into your messages in your inbox with opportunities, if you're staying consistent with it. So I think back, like, yeah, I was in LinkedIn super early when people weren't doing that, but at some point it started becoming a thing, probably about 10 years ago. Like people really started being intentional with like, refining their personal brand on LinkedIn. And that's at least when I recognize it. And I think I could have like jumped on that train and at least posted, something like every 3 months or I'm sorry, let me rephrase this. So I think I could have at least posted like every other day. So like 3 times a week. I think I could have posted during that period like 3 times a week, and not stuff that's just like promoting my company and our webinar and our press release, like so many posts like promoting press releases that no one cares about, right? So yeah, I think if I would have done that, like yeah, I'd just be raking in so much money now. And at the same time, too, like maxing out connections. Like there was a podcast I did recently, this one. If you want to listen to it, with Destiny Brandt, she's a independent recruiter that works specifically in sales, and her whole thing was like just max out your connections every week. Like you can connect with 100 people on LinkedIn, and just max it out. Like your ideal, not just the prospects that you're prospecting into, but any connections you have left after that, like people you want to freelance for, companies you want to eventually work at, like whatever it is, like just habitually, like nonstop connect with those people. Like I'm at 12,000 and change followers right now. Like I could have been way over that. I could have just like maxed this shit out. So those are the 6 things. And to recap all this, been more pessimistic when looking at pipeline, leverage my managers better in sales, given myself a break, taken less responsibility, gotten involved more outside of sales to learn more about those companies and build up that business acumen and set myself up for my next career. Niche down and really stayed specific with who I'm selling to and what I'm selling. And then been more intentional and proactive. Now, what's the other thing? Intentional, proactive, diligent. I want to use a word similar to diligent here, but been more like proactive and diligent with my personal branding, and just made it like a very regular motion from the get-go. I think if I would have done those 6 things, I don't know, I would have made some more money. I probably would have been a little more happier and stayed in sales a little bit longer. But ultimately, here's the caveat, here's the asterisk to all this. Like, I'm super lucky. I have like, when I think about my career, it's like very much like kind of a Forrest Gump vibe. Like, just if I think about the companies I worked for and when I worked for them, like super fortunate. And then the work that I'm doing now with Sales Loft, it's like it really is a dream job. Like, I really love my work. There's no Sunday scaries or anything like that. So everything happens for a reason, right? So, even though I could have done all these things differently to get different results and feel differently in my career and yada yada yada, like right now things are awesome, and you can't beat that with a stick. So, hopefully, if you're listening, you got some kind of value from this. Um, and if not, like, who gives a shit? It was free, right? So, that's it. Love you. Bye.